What's up YouTube, DG up here back again with another video. Today we're going to be doing a long and tedious job, but it's a very important job on the VQs, and that is timing chains, timing chain tensioners, and the timing chain itself. The reason why we're going to be doing this is mostly preventive maintenance, but I also think our tensioner is on its way out. Now a lot of times the tensioner is hydraulic and the hydraulics will blow and it'll fail and not put proper tension on the chain, or the plastic guides will wear because they're plastic and they will break over time. If that completely fails, your timing can actually jump or completely fall off. You don't want that to happen because then your engine blows up if you go out of time. By the way, if you're new to the video, you like G35 content, Z content, car flipping content, builds, go ahead and subscribe down below. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers. So if you can help me out, I'd really appreciate it. I'll be sure to give love back. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So this can definitely be intimidating if this is like your first timing job. I've done timing a few times, so I understand the process and the concept. It's relatively the same on most cars. Now I have lucked out and done this on rear-wheel drive cars and not front-wheel drive. If this is front-wheel drive, then it's worse. You pretty much have to lift the engine out of the car, but because it's rear-wheel drive, the engine's oriented this way, we have pretty easy access to the timing cover. Now in order to remove this, we're gonna have to remove hoses out of the way, remove these grounds. We're gonna have to take the belt off and move these pulleys out of the way, and then we're gonna have to take the crankshaft pulley off itself, and we're gonna have to actually remove the lower oil pan to get access to two bolts that hold this timing cover on. We're gonna go ahead and remove these fans just to give us a little bit more breathing room. And while I'm at it, might as well give it a full refresh. Let's empty this oil catch can. I haven't emptied it in a few months, so it'll probably have some oil in it. So if you're doing the sprockets and everything, you'll actually have to remove your valve covers, and that way you can get access to the camshafts. I'm not gonna be doing that because those pretty much never fail. Now, you might say, well, you might as well replace it since you're in here. It's a lot more money to get high quality, to get absolutely everything. I do just have the chains, tensioners, and guides. Only certain items really wear. I pretty much never heard of a sprocket failing or anything like that, or even the chain itself. It's usually just the guides and the tensioners. Before you do everything, go ahead and disconnect your battery. While the oil's draining down below, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the fans up top. There's these two bolts that hold it in. One of my really big pet peeves with Nissan is that their connectors are way too hard to remove, and they just take a lot of hand fatigue out of you, or like a lot of physical pain from your hands, especially if it's cold, to actually remove it. So these connectors might be a pain in the ass, but you need to push the clip in. I literally can't even like remove the clip. It's fucking asinine. So while this coolant is draining out, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the oil pan bolts and remove the oil pan, which is fortunately extremely simple on this car. It's just a bunch of 10mm bolts. These have basically no torque on them, so you can easily break this with just a normal ratchet. No problem doing this with normal hand tools. Not to flex, but pretty much no sludge, no buildup whatsoever, clean as day. Go ahead and remove our belts. We're gonna first break loose that tensioner. It's gonna be, I think, a 14mm right there, and then it's a 12 right there. Hard to point, but break this first so that this can move, and then you're gonna use that to adjust the tension and remove the belt. And it's going to be the same deal on that side for the AC compressor. Okay, so now we got the fan pulled out here, and the belt's removed, everything's drained, and the oil pan removed. We're going to go ahead and start clearing stuff out of the way on this timing cover. I'm sorry, there's a bunch of crud here. I have a valve cover leak, and I did replace them, but however, I didn't realize the gaskets were really cheap and they're already failing, so that's great. So we're gonna go ahead and clean that up, no worries. I'm gonna paint this timing cover. We're gonna at least need to move that power steering pump out of the way. Anything that's connected or on the timing cover itself, we're gonna have to remove. So these hoses, these grounds, the brackets for the tensioners and everything, and then eventually the crank pulley. So what I have here now is I have something jammed in the flywheel to lock it. You're supposed to use a tool, but you can just jam something in the flywheel and make sure it doesn't move. I have a brake pad in there. I don't think this is enough leverage for me to try to break it. I'm gonna try, but this is really hard. And there is a trick where you can use the torque of the starter and put a breaker bar like on the frame and turn the engine over and it'll break it loose instantly. However, I was gonna do that and then I realized there's no oil in the car and my oil pan is removed, so I'm definitely not doing that. So you get to watch me struggle. Okay, I'm out of breath and probably gonna be sore tomorrow morning, but after heating it up and using literally all my strength, I was able to get the most satisfying brake sound and it broke the nut loose and now it's slowly turning. Finally, I'm glad that's over with. Let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna empty the catch can while I'm at it. Definitely got a decent amount of blow-by in there. That's enough for a nice little drink. There's like maybe 40 bolts that like bolt this freaking timing cover on. It's kind of ridiculous, not gonna lie. I already got a head start in some of them. They're not super hard to break loose or anything. It's just there's so many of them. Even if you have power tools, it's like a lot. I've been breaking them loose and then using a drill to back some of them out. And then I don't know if I can get a drill down there, but it should be pretty straightforward. The pulley wasn't hard to break loose. You just need to pry it a little bit and then just wriggle it with your hands and then pull it straight out, like perfectly straight out, and it'll come out pretty easily. But yeah, let's go ahead and just start getting all these bolts down. There are some 17s too. Just keep that in mind. You don't need to remove these. That's just the cam covers. And that was if you were going to service it without removing the timing cover. So you don't need to remove the little covers down there. Pretty sure I got all the bolts off up there. Just don't forget to remove these two bolts. It's going to be this one right here. It's hard to see, but these two bolts that hold the timing cover from the bottom through the lower oil pan. Now, when I originally was going to do this, I thought I was going to have to take the whole oil pan off, the upper and lower, which means you have to drop the whole subframe and everything. You don't actually have to do that. You just need to drop the lower oil pan and you should be able to take the timing cover off. Fortunately, because at that point I might as well rebuild the engine for how much stuff I'm taking off. So okay, so LOL JK, you do need to remove the power steering pump bracket. Now that was actually a pain to remove because the bolts are all the way back there and they're almost inaccessible. The manifold kind of blocks the way. You have to move the alternator all the way, but I did get it eventually. You kind of got to get at it from the bottom. Other than that, this should be free to lift out now, so let's go ahead and remove it. And there's our timing cover. So we're pretty much at the halfway point of where we're at now. I finally got this stupid coolant hose out of the way. I absolutely cannot stand pinch clamps. I literally, oh my god, I was considering cutting it off. It took me 30 minutes to remove it. I couldn't remove this one either. You can't get enough clearance to actually remove them, and I'm like, why do car makers use this? I had the same problem working on a Subaru one time. I could not remove it, like, for the life of me. There really shouldn't be a lot of play in the chain itself because it's metal and it's not like a belt or there's gonna be a little plate. The chain should be pretty not moving. This does seem like it's moving a little bit, so I think our tensioner is failing, which is what I suspected in the first place. And this is why we're going to tackle this now before we wait till it gets bad and then it completely fails and then the chain slips. That'd be all bad. So this is where you got to pay attention. What we need to do now is actually set this at top dead center. Now, it's very easy to mess this up because people don't understand that this doesn't rotate the same amount as the camshafts. These actually rotate twice, or these rotate half a turn when this rotates one turn. So if you rotate this once, this can actually be facing 100 degrees the wrong way. But if you rotate it twice, then it can be facing the right way. So I'm actually pretty close right now. You want these little dowels right here to be facing up, these little markings. And then there's a marking right here on the oil pump in the back. And then there's a marking on the crank sprocket. You want these to line up, and then you want to make sure these are all facing up, and then you'll be at top dead center. So let's go ahead and do that. You're gonna need to unlock the flywheel if the flywheel is locked, but we probably will lock it back up once we get back to top dead center. That one right there needs to line up with the notch in the back of the timing cover. You can see that? Sorry, the lighting's a little whack. That needs to line up. And then it's real. I can't use the light and like use my finger, but you'll see there's a little raise in the cover, and then there's notches in the sprocket that line up with that. Make sure that lines up. And the same thing on this side. It will look a little off on the crank. That's okay, that's normal. I looked it up to make sure because I was a little concerned about it. It is going to be a little off for that timing, but this is okay as long as everything else is lined up. You are perfectly in time and top dead center and everything, so don't stress about it too much. All right, so to go over what I'm going to be explaining, I got my kit from Cloy's. This is what Aaron Newman is running. This is a really good quality kit, and it's cheaper than OEM, but still very high quality. This was like $300. These are our guides. Our guides here, our main chain, and then our two cam chains, and then we got our 3 hydraulic tensioners that we're going to be replacing. Now you can get different kits where it's just the chain, or you can get just the guides. I wanted to replace the chain since I was going through the trouble anyway, obviously, and then I'm not going to be replacing my water pump, which I did not get because my water pump got replaced recently, and it should be good for another 60 to 80k miles. And if it does fail, I can actually just use the access cover and replace it that way, so I'm not too concerned about it. Also, I forgot to mention I'm going to be replacing my oil gallery gaskets. Now, I don't think mine are bad, but when these do go bad, you pretty much have to do everything I just did just to change them. These are very cheap, and while I'm doing it, this is a might as well type deal. If these start to fail, you will actually get low oil pressure, and you'll get a code for it. And again, it's cheap, but it's a lot of labor, and if you don't do your work yourself, this is going to cost you like $1,000 to replace. So definitely worth the $20 and the extra 5 minutes it takes to replace these gaskets and make sure that this does not fail. I want my car to last for a long time, or at least my engine, and this is just great preventive maintenance to do. So I made a oof, and I was taking these sprockets off, and I ended up rotating the cam at a time, and I cannot put it back. And so what I ended up having to do was take the whole valve cover off anyway. I love how I try to avoid doing work and then I just give myself after work, and then I had to manually rotate the cams back into time. They're back in time now. Now the marks are lined up again, which is really annoying, but it's all good. Okay, so when you're doing the oil gallery gaskets, make sure you prep the surface, or any surface for a gasket. I went ahead and sanded this down with a really fine, or not really fine, really harsh sandpaper, so it was smooth. You can see it shining and everything, and then I went over it with like 320 to make sure it was no roughness to it, just to get the old gasket off. The old gasket was on there pretty good, but now I got it pretty clean, so we can put the new gasket on there and then torque it down. I already got this one on. That was pretty smooth. Yeah, I 100% recommend getting new hardware because these do want to strip once you get close to getting them torqued down. If they started to strip, I pretty much just stopped trying to tighten them. But they're on there pretty snug, and that should definitely seal the gasket, no issue. Okay, so I got the timing cover painted. Look at that, looks sick. Nice and shiny. So all our marks are good. Everything is lined up perfectly. It's quadruple checking. You literally cannot check this enough times. So our timing marks are still on time after rotating it a few times, so that means we're good. We also didn't get any like resistance, or we didn't hear anything hit. So that means the engine's gonna rotate with clearance at the very least. Honestly, I'm pretty sure it's on time, so I'm not worried about breaking my engine. But this is the most important part. Now everything from here is just putting stuff back together, and that's probably going to take some time, especially because I end up having to take the valve covers off anyway, and then now have to replace the gaskets because they're leaking and all that stuff. So it's going to be a lot of reassembly, but thankfully, because I can just edit all that out, the next scene I'll probably pretty much be back together. And just like that, we're ready to go. Triple checked everything, make sure everything is tight, everything got installed. Everything's snug. Just put power steering fluid in it. I bled the system. I think I need to top it off a little bit. It should be good there. I'm about to bleed the coolant once I start the car. Got the coolant bleeder valve open. Everything's connected to the intake. I think we're good to go. Let's see what happens. seems good. There's a little bit of smoke oil got on the exhaust manifold, so that just seems to burn off. That's all good and dandy. Unless the valve cover is just leaking atrociously. I don't think that's the case though. That is a lot of smoke. Okay, so this is some time later. I ran into a bunch of issues, two specifically. So when I ended up trying to take the water pump off, when I did the timing to make putting on the chain a little easier, I ended up cracking the pump. And I thought it was fine because I was still able to bolt and push the water pump back in. But I guess it wasn't fine, it didn't seal properly. And this actually seals the oil and coolant from getting together. And it was actually mixing the oil and coolant. This is red because I put dye in the coolant to see where the leak was coming from. And then I saw that the dye was getting into the oil, which I'm like, this is awful. It obviously wasn't a head gasket. It wouldn't blow that bad if it wasn't blown before. So I knew it was the water pump. It was also leaking from the weep hole on the side. So I have to replace the whole water pump. This sucks. This is a brand new OEM one too that replaced like 15,000 miles ago, and I wasn't even going to replace it. And of course I ended up cracking it trying to take it off because I didn't know you're supposed to use bolts to actually push it out, which is weird. I also had leaky valve covers, which is super annoying. I had to redo them 3 times, and I don't know if you can see down there, I used a bunch of gasket maker and finally sealed. That brand new Fail Pro gaskets, by the way, did not want to seal with the right torque sequence and specs and everything. I don't know why. Maybe the actual cover itself is warped or something, but I already bled the cooling system. My heat works and everything. It's not overheating. It sounds good, no weird noises, so the car is good. Just changing the oil and we'll go for a test drive. All right, it's been a week since I've driven this car, which is the longest I've gone without driving this in quite some time. And it's very nice to be driving again, I'll tell you that much. Oh, I miss this car. Oh, it's driving great, sounds great, everything's back to normal. No check engine light, no weird noises. Car keeps at a really good temperature. I don't know if you guys can see that. Well guys, everything's good. Finally, definitely ran into some hiccups. Yeah, now we're back on the road and we got a perfectly good, reliable G35 and everything's checking out good. And guys, I'm excited. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time.